The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Is this Mia Torres?" "Yes." Mia sat up in bed, heart already pounding. Late-night calls were never good news. "This is Officer Janet Mills from the Department of Corrections Victim Services. I'm calling to inform you that Daniel Vega was released from state prison today under the early release program. As the victim in his case, you're entitled to notification." The room tilted. Mia gripped her phone so hard her knuckles went white. "Released? He was supposed to serve 3 more years. He got 8 years for what he did to me. He served 5 years with good behavior and qualified for the early release program due to prison overcrowding. He's been placed in a halfway house as part of his reintegration. I'm required to inform you that he's prohibited from contacting you under the terms of his parole." "Prohibited?" Mia repeated numbly. "Like the restraining order was supposed to prohibit him from breaking into my apartment and stabbing me 6 times? Officer Mills was quiet for a moment. "I understand your concern, Ms. Torres. If Mr. Vega violates his parole conditions, he'll be returned to prison immediately." "If he violates them? After he's already hurt me again?" "We'll be monitoring his compliance closely. You should also know that he's required to stay within a 50-mile radius of the halfway house and maintain employment. He can't leave the state." After Officer Mills hung up, Mia sat in her bedroom in the small house she'd bought in Providence, Rhode Island, 3 hours from Boston, where Daniel had nearly killed her 5 years ago, and tried to remember how to breathe. Daniel Vega, her ex-boyfriend of 3 years, the man who'd seemed charming and successful when they'd met, who'd gradually become controlling and possessive, who'd isolated her from friends and family, who'd monitored her every move, the man who'd broken into her apartment when she'd finally left him, who'd stabbed her 6 times while screaming that if he couldn't have her, no one could. She'd survived, barely. 3 weeks in the hospital, 8 surgeries, scars across her abdomen and arms that would never fully fade. Daniel had been arrested, charged with attempted murder, and sentenced to 8 years. The judge had called it an extraordinarily violent assault by someone who showed no remorse. 5 years. He'd served 5 years out of 8. And now he was out, living in a halfway house somewhere, required to stay 50 miles away from her, which was supposed to make her feel safe. It didn't. Mia knew Daniel, knew how he thought. 50 miles was nothing. Parole conditions were just words on paper. He'd violated a restraining order before. Breaking it hadn't stopped him from stabbing her. Why would parole conditions stop him now? Mia pulled out her phone and called the one person she trusted to understand. Her brother answered on the 3rd ring, voice rough with sleep. "Mia, what's wrong?" "Carlos Daniel's out. They let him out early. He's in a halfway house somewhere and Her voice broke. "I'm scared. What if he comes here? What if the parole conditions don't stop him?" "Where's the halfway house?" "I don't know. They wouldn't tell me the exact location for his privacy." The word tasted bitter. His privacy, like he didn't try to murder me. Carlos was quiet for a moment. Mia could hear him moving, probably getting out of bed. "I'm coming to Providence. Tomorrow. You're not dealing with this alone." "Carlos, you have work." "Family is more important than work. I'll be there by noon." After they hung up, Mia walked through her house, checking locks. Front door, back door, all the windows. The security system she'd had installed when she'd moved here. All of it felt inadequate. Locks hadn't stopped Daniel before. Security systems could be disabled. Distance meant nothing to someone obsessed. She'd spent 5 years rebuilding her life. 5 years of therapy, of learning to feel safe again, of teaching herself that not every man was dangerous, that relationships could be healthy instead of terrifying. 5 years of hard-won peace that had just been shattered by a phone call. Daniel was out. And Mia knew. The way you know things when you've survived someone trying to kill you, that this wasn't over. What would you have done? Would you have stayed in your home hoping parole conditions would protect you? Or would you have run again? Carlos arrived the next day at noon, exactly as promised. Mia's brother was 34, 3 years older than her, with the same dark hair and brown eyes they'd inherited from their mother. He worked construction in Boston and had the build that came from years of physical labor. He also had tattoos covering both arms, including one on his right forearm that showed a motorcycle wheel with wings, the Iron Serpents MC patch. Carlos had been in the motorcycle club for 8 years, road captain of the Boston chapter, which meant he was third in command and responsible for planning routes and leading rides. It also meant he had brothers, over 50 members in the Boston charter alone, who would back him up when he needed it. "Tell me everything the DOC told you," Carlos said once they were sitting in Mia's kitchen. Mia explained the call, the early release, the halfway house placement, the parole conditions that were supposed to keep Daniel away from her. "Do you trust those conditions to protect you?" Carlos asked. "No. Daniel violated a restraining order to break into my apartment and stab me. Why would parole conditions stop him? They won't. Men like Daniel don't stop until they're made to stop." Carlos pulled out his phone. "I need to make some calls, find out where this halfway house is, who's running it, what Daniel's actually up to." "How are you going to find that out? The DOC wouldn't tell me." "The DOC won't tell you, but the club has connections, people who know things. Give me a few hours." Carlos made 3 phone calls, speaking in the shorthand language Mia recognized from years of having a brother in a motorcycle club. "Need information on a parolee, violent offender, attempted murder." "Yeah, I'll owe you one." 2 hours later, Carlos had answers. "Daniel's at Restoration House in Cranston, about 20 minutes from here. It's a halfway house for violent offenders transitioning back to society. He's required to live there for 6 months, maintain employment, attend counseling, submit to random drug tests." "Who runs the place?" "That's the interesting part." Carlos showed her his phone screen, a website for Restoration House. The manager is a guy named Thomas Rattlesnake Brennan. He's the road captain for the Iron Serpents Providence charter. Mia blinked. "A Hells Angels member runs a halfway house for violent offenders?" "Iron Serpents aren't Hells Angels. We're our own club. But yeah, Rattlesnake runs the place. Has for 5 years. It's legit. Licensed by the state. Inspected regularly. Good track record." "Why would a biker run a halfway house?" "Because Rattlesnake did 15 years for armed robbery. Got out, went straight, wanted to help other ex-cons transition. The club supported it." Carlos looked at her seriously. "And Mia, this might be the best thing that could have happened." "How is Daniel being released early and living 20 minutes away the best thing?" "Because Rattlesnake runs that house. And when he finds out one of his residents tried to murder someone and might try again, he's going to make sure that doesn't happen. He can't do anything. Daniel hasn't violated parole. Rattlesnake can do a lot within the rules. And if Daniel steps outside the rules even a little bit, Rattlesnake will know. The man runs a tight ship. Residents follow the program or they get sent back to prison." Carlos stood. "I'm going to Restoration House. Going to talk to Rattlesnake. Let him know the situation." "What if he doesn't care? What if he thinks I'm just an ex being dramatic?" "He'll care. Rattlesnake's sister was killed by her ex-husband 20 years ago. He doesn't tolerate men who hurt women. Trust me on this." Restoration House was a converted 3-story building in a working-class neighborhood of Cranston. Clean, well-maintained, with security cameras visible at the entrance. A sign by the door read, "Restoration House, halfway program for offenders. All visitors must check in at the front desk." Carlos walked in. The front desk was occupied by a heavy-set man in his 50s with a graying beard, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that showed tattoos covering both arms. His vest hung on the back of his chair, Iron Serpents patches clearly visible. "Help you?" the man asked. "I'm looking for Rattlesnake. I'm Carlos Torres, road captain for the Boston charter." The man's demeanor changed immediately. "Brother, I'm Rattlesnake. What brings you down from Boston?" "We need to talk about one of your residents, Daniel Vega." Rattlesnake's expression sharpened. "Conference room, follow me." They sat in a small room with a table and chairs. Rattlesnake closed the door. "What about Vega?" "He tried to murder my sister 5 years ago. Stabbed her 6 times, got 8 years, served 5, just got released to your program." Carlos pulled out his phone and showed Rattlesnake photos, crime scene photos of Mia's apartment, hospital photos of her injuries, court documents. Rattlesnake looked through everything carefully. His jaw tightened. Your sister survived. Barely. 3 weeks in the hospital. 8 surgeries. She's spent 5 years rebuilding her life. Now Vega's out and living 20 minutes from her new house. Does she think he'll come after her? She knows he will. Guys like Vega don't serve time and decide to move on. They serve time and get angrier. My sister's terrified. Rattlesnake was quiet for a long moment. Vega's been here 3 days, checked in, following the rules so far, hasn't violated curfew, hasn't missed counseling. On paper, he's a model resident. And off paper, I'll be watching him very carefully now that I know what he did. Rattlesnake's voice had gone cold. Men who try to murder women don't get the benefit of the doubt in my house. If Vega even thinks about violating parole, I'll know, and I'll send him back to prison so fast his head spins. What if he's smart? What if he waits until he's off parole? Then we handle it differently. But your sister shouldn't have to live in fear. Give me her number. I'll call her directly. Let her know she's got someone watching Vega. Carlos provided me his number. Thank you, brother. This means a lot. We protect our own. Your sister's your family, which makes her Iron Serpents family. She's under the club's protection now. Mia's phone rang that evening. Unknown number. Ms. Torres, this is Thomas Brennan. I manage Restoration House, where Daniel Vega is currently residing. Your brother Carlos came to see me today. Mia's breath caught. He told you about Daniel. He told me everything. Showed me photos and court documents. I need you to understand something. I run a program for violent offenders because I believe people can change. But I also believe some people don't want to change. They just want to avoid consequences. Daniel doesn't want to change. He wants revenge. That's what I'm guessing, too. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to watch Daniel very carefully. Every movement, every interaction, every minute of his time here is going to be monitored. If he violates curfew by even 1 minute, if he misses a counseling session, if he fails a drug test, he goes back to prison. What if he doesn't violate anything? What if he follows all the rules and then comes after me the day his parole ends? Rattlesnake was quiet for a moment. Then the club handles it before he gets that far. Ms. Torres, I can't make promises about what happens outside the legal system, but I can promise that Daniel Vega is not going to hurt you again. Not on my watch. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Your brother is Iron Serpents. That makes you family. And I lost my sister to a man like Daniel 20 years ago. I couldn't protect her, but I can protect you. After hanging up, Mia sat with that for a long time. A halfway house manager, who was also a biker gang member, motorcycle club member she corrected herself, was now monitoring Daniel, watching for any violation that would send him back to prison. It should have felt strange. Wrong, maybe. Trusting someone in a motorcycle club to keep her safe. Instead, it felt like the first time in 3 days that she could actually breathe. For 2 weeks, Mia heard nothing. Carlos checked in daily. Rattlesnake says Daniel's following the rules, goes to work at a warehouse job, the halfway house setup, comes back for curfew, attends counseling, no violations. That's good, right? It's suspicious. Guys who nearly murdered someone don't usually become model parolees. Rattlesnake thinks Daniel's planning something. On the 15th day after Daniel's release, Mia's phone rang at 2 a.m. Rattlesnake's voice was calm but urgent. Ms. Torres, Daniel violated curfew tonight. He left the halfway house at 11 p.m. and hasn't returned. I've notified his parole officer. He'll be returned to prison as soon as he's located. Where is he? I don't know yet, but I've got brothers from the Providence Charter looking, and I need you to do something for me. What? Pack a bag. You're not staying in your house tonight. I've got a safe location for you till Daniel's back in custody. I have security. Security won't stop someone determined. Pack a bag. A prospect named Joey is on his way to get you. He'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else. 8 minutes later, a motorcycle pulled into Mia's driveway. A young man in his 20s wearing an Iron Serpents vest with a prospect patch knocked on her door. Ms. Torres, I'm Joey. Rattlesnake sent me. Mia grabbed the bag she'd packed and followed Joey to his bike. He gave her a helmet. Ever been on a motorcycle? No. Hold on tight. We're going to the clubhouse. You'll be safe there. The Iron Serpents Clubhouse was in an industrial part of Providence, a converted warehouse with security cameras, reinforced doors, and about 10 motorcycles parked outside despite the 2 a.m. hour. Inside, Rattlesnake waited with several other club members. Daniel's phone was tracked to your neighborhood, Rattlesnake said without preamble. He was circling your street. Police are looking for him now. You're staying here until he's in custody. Why would he risk violating parole to come to my house? Because he's obsessed and stupid. Men like Daniel think they're smarter than everyone else, think they can violate parole and not get caught. One of the other bikers spoke up, a man in his 40s with a president patch. I'm Viper, run the Providence Charter. Your brother Carlos called, asked us to protect you, so that's what we're doing. I don't want to put you in danger. We're not in danger. Daniel is. Viper's voice was flat. He violated parole to stalk the woman he tried to murder. When the police find him, and they will, he's going back to prison for the rest of his sentence. And if he's stupid enough to come near this clubhouse, he'll face consequences before the police even arrive. Mia spent that night in a room at the clubhouse. Couldn't sleep. Kept imagining Daniel circling her neighborhood, looking for her, planning violence. At 6 a.m., Rattlesnake knocked on her door. Daniel's in custody. Police picked him up 3 blocks from your house. He had bolt cutters and a knife. He was planning to break in. Mia felt her knees go weak. He was going to try, but he failed. And now he's going back to prison for parole violation plus attempted burglary. His parole officer is recommending he serve the full remaining 3 years without possibility of early release. 3 years, then he's out again. 3 years gives us time to make sure you're protected when he gets out. If he gets out. Rattlesnake looked at her seriously. Mia, I need to tell you something. Daniel's not going to stop. Even after 3 more years, men like him don't stop until they're made to stop permanently. What does that mean? It means when he's released again, the club is going to make sure he understands that you're untouchable, that approaching you carries consequences he won't survive. We'll handle it legally if possible, but we'll handle it regardless. Mia should have been uncomfortable with the implications, should have questioned what handle it meant. Instead, she just felt grateful that someone was finally taking Daniel's threats seriously. 3 months after Daniel was returned to prison, Mia received a letter from the Department of Corrections. Daniel had been involved in a fight with another inmate. He'd been moved to a higher security facility, and his release date had been pushed back another 2 years due to the disciplinary action. 5 years now before he could potentially be released. Mia called Rattlesnake to tell him. I heard, Rattlesnake said. The fight wasn't random. Word got around about what Daniel did to you. Certain inmates don't like men who hurt women. They made their feelings known. Did the club have anything to do with that? The club has friends everywhere, including in the prison system. Let's just say that Daniel's reputation preceded him, and he found himself in a situation where he had to defend himself. Poorly. Mia understood what Rattlesnake wasn't quite saying. The club had made sure other inmates knew what Daniel had done, and those inmates had handled it themselves. Thank you, Mia said quietly. Your family, that's what we do. Over the next year, Mia became part of the Iron Serpents extended family. Not as a member, women weren't patched members of most motorcycle clubs, but as someone under the club's protection, someone who attended club events, who was greeted warmly by brothers, who'd earned respect through her survival. She also started volunteering at Restoration House. Rattlesnake had asked her to speak to residents about the impact of violence, about what it was like to survive someone trying to kill you, about the long road of recovery. Most of these guys don't think about their victims as real people, Rattlesnake explained. They see their crimes as abstract. Hearing from someone who survived makes it real, makes them think. Mia started speaking once a month, telling her story to rooms full of men who'd committed violence, who were trying to reintegrate into society, who needed to understand the lasting damage they'd caused. Some of them listened, really listened, asked questions about how to make amends, how to change, how to become better. Others didn't. But even for them, Mia's presence was a reminder that violence had real consequences beyond prison time, and she found it healing, taking her trauma and turning it into something that might prevent future violence. One evening after a speaking session, a young man approached her nervously. "Ms. Torres, I'm Marcus. I'm here for domestic violence. I hurt my girlfriend. Hearing your story made me realize—" He stopped. "I could have killed her. I could have done what Daniel did to you, and I never thought about it that way before." "Are you going to change?" Mia asked. "I'm trying. I'm in anger management. I'm doing the work, and I'm never going to hurt anyone again." "Good, because the alternative is becoming Daniel, and nobody should become that." 2 years after Daniel was sent back to prison, Mia stood in front of a state legislative committee testifying about victim rights and parole reform. She'd become an advocate, working with victim services organizations, helping draft legislation that would give victims more say in early release decisions. "I was stabbed 6 times by my ex-boyfriend," Mia told the legislators. "He was sentenced to 8 years. He served 5 before being released early due to prison overcrowding. I received a phone call at midnight informing me he was out. I had no input into the decision, no ability to object, no protection beyond parole conditions that meant nothing to someone who'd already tried to kill me." She paused. "Daniel violated those parole conditions within 2 weeks. He was caught outside my house with bolt cutters and a knife. If he hadn't been caught, I'd be dead. The early release program nearly killed me." The legislators asked questions. What reforms would help? What protections should be in place? Mia provided detailed recommendations, victim input into early release decisions, GPS monitoring for violent offenders, mandatory notification at least 30 days before release instead of after the fact. Real reforms followed. Not enough. Not perfect. But something. And through it all, Mia continued her work at Restoration House, helping violent offenders understand the impact of their crimes, while Rattlesnake and the Iron Serpents made sure none of them ever threatened her. 5 years after Daniel had been returned to prison for parole violation, Mia received another DOC phone call. "Ms. Torres, this is Officer Janet Mills. I'm calling to inform you that Daniel Vega is scheduled for a parole hearing in 6 months. As the victim, you have the right to submit a statement and appear at the hearing." Mia's stomach dropped. "He's eligible for parole again?" "He's served the required minimum time. The parole board will consider his behavior, rehabilitation efforts, and victim input before making a decision." After hanging up, Mia called Rattlesnake. "I heard," he said. "Daniel's parole hearing is in 6 months. The club's already preparing." "Preparing how?" "We're documenting everything Daniel's done in prison, every disciplinary action, every incident, every sign that he hasn't changed. We've got contacts who can testify to the parole board about his behavior." "Will it work?" "I don't know, but we're going to make sure the parole board sees who Daniel really is. Not the reformed model prisoner his lawyer will present. The violent, obsessed man who tried to murder you and would try again if given the chance." The parole hearing happened on a cold morning in November. Mia sat in a room with the parole board, Daniel's attorney, and Daniel himself, who she hadn't seen in person since his trial 5 years ago. He looked older. Prison had hardened him, but his eyes still carried that same obsessive intensity when he looked at her. Daniel's attorney presented him as rehabilitated, anger management classes completed, clean disciplinary record for 3 years, employment skills training finished, ready to reintegrate into society. Then Mia spoke. "Daniel Vega stabbed me 6 times because I left him. He violated parole to come to my house with weapons intending to finish what he started. In prison, he's been involved in multiple altercations. He hasn't changed. He's just learned to hide it better." Rattlesnake spoke next, presenting documentation of Daniel's prison record that his attorney had conveniently omitted. The fights, the threats, the continued obsession. Daniel had been caught with photos of Mia that another inmate had printed from the internet. The parole board deliberated for 30 minutes. "Mr. Vega, your parole is denied. You will serve the remainder of your sentence. Earliest next parole consideration will be in 5 years. Daniel's face went red. As he was being escorted out, he looked directly at Mia and mouthed, "This isn't over." Rattlesnake saw it too. After the hearing, he pulled Mia aside. "He's never going to stop, even after he serves his full sentence. You know that, right?" "I know. When he gets out, In 5 years or 10 years or whenever, the club will handle it. We'll make sure he understands that you're permanently off limits. How? We'll have a very direct conversation, the kind that makes men like Daniel understand that consequences are real, that you have brothers who won't let him hurt you. Will it work? It worked with your brother's ex-girlfriend's stalker, worked with a dozen other situations where the legal system failed. It'll work with Daniel too. Mia went back to her life, teaching at risk youth, speaking at Restoration House, advocating for victim rights, dating again, something she'd been too scared to do for years. And knowing that when Daniel eventually got out, she wouldn't be alone. She'd have her brother Carlos, she'd have Rattlesnake, and the Iron Serpents. She'd have protection that didn't depend on court orders or police response times. It wasn't the way the system was supposed to work. Justice was supposed to come from courts and police, not motorcycle clubs. But the system had failed her repeatedly, and the Iron Serpents hadn't. 10 years after Daniel had tried to murder her, Mia stood at a charity motorcycle ride organized by the Iron Serpents to raise money for domestic violence services. Hundreds of bikers, leather vests and loud engines, and a culture that looked dangerous from outside but that Mia had learned was built on loyalty and protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Rattlesnake rode beside her. She'd learned to ride herself over the past few years, on a smaller bike but still part of the club's extended family. Daniel's up for parole again next year, Rattlesnake said over the engine noise. You ready for that? With the club backing me, yeah, I'm ready. We'll make sure the parole board knows he's still dangerous. But if he does get out, you'll handle it, I know. Damn right we will. They rode together, part of a convoy of motorcycles heading through Providence, raising money for women escaping violence. And Mia thought about how strange life was, how 10 years ago she'd nearly died, how the system had failed her repeatedly, how a motorcycle club had become her family and her protection. It wasn't a perfect story, but it was a survival story, and that was enough. I'll continue the story with more depth and additional plot developments, continued from previous. 15 years after Daniel had first tried to murder Mia, she received a call that changed everything. Ms. Torres, this is Officer Janet Mills from DOC Victim Services. I'm calling to inform you that Daniel Vega has been granted parole. He'll be released in 30 days. Mia felt the room tilt. She sat down hard on her couch. Granted parole, but the last hearing. He served 15 years total. His behavior has been exemplary for the past 5 years. The parole board determined he successfully completed all rehabilitation programs and poses minimal risk to public safety. Minimal risk. He tried to kill me, twice. I understand your concern. Mr. Vega will have strict parole conditions. GPS monitoring, mandatory counseling, prohibited contact with you. He's also required to live at least 100 miles from your current residence. 100 miles is nothing. He violated a restraining order before. He violated parole before. Why would conditions stop him this time? I can only inform you of the board's decision and the conditions in place. If you have concerns, I recommend contacting local law enforcement. After hanging up, Mia sat in silence for a long moment. Then she made 3 phone calls, first to Carlos. Daniel's getting out. 30 days. I'll call Rattlesnake, and I'm coming to Providence this weekend. We need to plan. Second to Rattlesnake. You heard? Just got the notification. I was his halfway house manager last time. They didn't assign him to me this time. Probably because I sent him back to prison so fast last time. Rattlesnake paused. But that doesn't mean we can't monitor him. I've got contacts at the facility they're sending him to. We'll know his every move. Third to her therapist. I need an emergency appointment. Daniel's being released. That weekend, Mia's living room was full of Iron Serpents. Carlos had driven down from Boston. Rattlesnake brought 3 other Providence chapter members, Viper, the president, Jax, the enforcer, and a younger member named Ghost, who handled the club's tech security. Here's what we know, Ghost said, laptop open on Mia's coffee table. Daniel's being released to a halfway house in Worcester, Massachusetts. That's 110 miles from here, just outside the prohibited distance. He's got GPS monitoring for the first year. Required to maintain employment. Can't leave Massachusetts without permission. What kind of employment? Mia asked. They've set him up at a warehouse, loading and shipping. Minimum wage, supervised position, standard for parolees. Viper leaned forward. The GPS monitoring is the key. If he violates his zone restrictions, if he comes within 100 miles of Providence, we'll know immediately. Ghost can tap into the monitoring system. That's illegal, Mia said. Technically, Ghost admitted. But it's also the only way to get real-time alerts if Daniel starts moving toward you. The parole office won't notify you until after he's already violated. We'll know the second he leaves his allowed zone. Carlos looked at his sister. This is your choice, Mia. We can monitor him through the system, which means bending some laws, or we can wait for official channels to notify you after he's already too close. Mia thought about Daniel showing up outside her house with bolts, cutters, and a knife 15 years ago. About the phone call that had come after he'd violated curfew, not before. Monitor him, she said. I need to know if he's coming before he gets here. Done, Ghost said, fingers already moving across his keyboard. I'll set up alerts. If Daniel's GPS tracker shows movement toward Providence or toward Boston, where your brother lives, we'll all get notified immediately. Rattlesnake pulled out a folder. I've also compiled everything from Daniel's 15 years in prison. He's been careful the past 5 years, clean record, completed programs. But years 6 through 10 were rough. Multiple fights, continued obsession with you. Guards found drawings of you in his cell twice. Letters he wrote but never sent. The parole board saw the clean 5 years. They didn't dig into the middle years. Why not? Because people see what they want to see. They want to believe rehabilitation works. They want to reduce prison overcrowding, so they look at recent behavior and ignore patterns. Rattlesnake's jaw tightened. Daniel learned to play the game. He's not reformed. He's patient. Jack spoke up, a man in his 50s with scars on his knuckles and a face that had seen violence. We need to talk about what happens if Daniel violates parole and comes after you. The police! The police respond after crimes happen. We're talking about prevention. Jax's voice was calm but serious. If Daniel shows up here, if he gets past the GPS monitoring somehow, if he's determined enough, we need a plan that keeps you alive while waiting for police to arrive. What kind of plan? Safe room. Reinforced door in your bedroom with a deadbolt that can't be kicked in. Phone charger in there so you're never without communication. Window exit route in case he gets in another way. And Jax hesitated. You should consider owning a firearm. Mia shook her head. I don't want a gun in my house. I understand. But if Daniel breaks in, with intent to kill, the 3 minutes it takes police to arrive might be too long. You should at least take a self-defense course. Learn how to fight back if you need to. Carlos added, the club runs self-defense training for women. Practical stuff. How to break holds, where to strike to disable someone, how to create distance to run. It's not about fighting fair. It's about surviving. Mia had spent 15 years trying to build a life that didn't revolve around fear of Daniel. The thought of taking self-defense classes, of reinforcing her bedroom like a panic room, of living in preparation for attack, it felt like letting Daniel win. But the alternative was being unprepared when he came. And Mia knew, the way survivors know that he would come. Okay, she said quietly. Self-defense classes, safe room, GPS monitoring, all of it. Viper nodded. We'll also increase presence around your neighborhood. Not obvious. We're not parking motorcycles on your street 24/7. But brothers will be nearby, regular drive-bys. Someone always close enough to respond if you call. For how long? For as long as it takes, until Daniel violates parole and goes back to prison, or until we're certain he's moved on, or... Viper stopped. Or until you handle it another way, Mia finished. Yeah, that too. Daniel was released on a cold Tuesday in February. Mia knew because Ghost's monitoring system sent an alert to everyone's phones. Subject released from custody, currently at Worcester halfway house, movement within approved zone. For 3 weeks, Daniel followed every rule perfectly. GPS showed him going to work at the warehouse each morning, returning to the halfway house each evening, attending mandatory counseling twice a week, no violations, no attempts to leave his approved zone. He's being too perfect, Rattlesnake said during one of the weekly check-ins that had become routine. Guys who've been locked up 15 years usually test boundaries. Have a beer, stay out past curfew by 10 minutes, something. Daniel hasn't put a foot wrong. Maybe he really has changed, Mia suggested, not believing it but needing to say it. Or maybe he's smart enough to know he's being watched closely, building up a track record of compliance before he makes his move. Ghost pulled up Daniel's GPS history on his laptop. Look at his movement patterns. Work, halfway house, counseling, grocery store, same routes every day, same timing. It's almost mechanical. What does that mean? Mia asked. It means he's establishing a pattern so detailed that when he breaks it, he'll have practiced the deviation. He knows exactly how long each route takes, how long he has between points, where cameras are. You're saying he's planning something. I'm saying his behavior looks like someone creating alibis, Ghost said. Someone who wants to establish such a predictable pattern that when he disappears for a few hours, he can claim GPS malfunction or that he got lost. Carlos looked grim. How long until he tries something? Based on his parole timeline, he needs 6 months of perfect behavior before restrictions ease. He's 3 weeks in. My guess is he waits until month 5 or 6, gets close to having more freedom, then makes his move. 5 months of waiting, Mia said. 5 months of preparing, Rattlesnake corrected. We use this time to make sure you're ready. Over the next 4 months, Mia's life transformed in ways she hadn't expected. The self-defense classes started as practical skill building. Jax taught her and a group of other women connected to the Iron Serpents how to escape holds, strike vulnerable points, use everyday objects as weapons. You're not trying to win a fight, Jax explained during one session. You're trying to create enough damage to escape. Eyes, throat, groin, knees. Hit hard, don't stop until you can run, then run. Mia learned. She practiced on dummies, then on padded clubs, members who pulled their strikes but didn't make it easy. She learned what it felt like to be grabbed from behind and how to break free. Learned where to drive her elbow to make someone let go. Learned that she was stronger than she'd thought. She also learned she wasn't alone. The other women in the class had similar stories: abusive exes, stalkers, men who wouldn't let go. All of them connected to the Iron Serpents through family or friendship, all of them learning to fight back. The club helps, one woman named Teresa told Mia after class. My ex was violating his restraining order for months. Police kept saying they couldn't do anything. Then my brother, he's a prospect, told the club. 3 brothers visited my ex, explained that the restraining order was real and violating it carried consequences. He hasn't bothered me since. The club threatened him? The club explained reality, Teresa corrected, echoing language Mia had heard before. Sometimes men don't understand consequences until the consequences are standing in front of them on motorcycles. Mia's house was also transformed. Carlos and several club members spent a weekend reinforcing her bedroom door, installing commercial-grade locks, adding a window escape ladder, setting up a charging station for her phone that was always accessible. If Daniel gets in the house, you lock yourself in here, Carlos explained, showing her the reinforced door that could withstand someone trying to kick it in. You call 911 first, then you call this number. He wrote a number on the wall next to her bed. That's the club's emergency line. Someone's always monitoring it. Within 3 minutes, you'll have brothers on their way. 3 minutes can be a long time. Which is why you also have this. Carlos showed her a canister. Pepper spray, not the keychain kind, the law enforcement grade. You spray anyone coming through that door, you create enough chaos to stay safe until help arrives. The security system was upgraded too. Cameras covering every entrance, motion sensors, glass break detectors, and Ghost set it up to alert not just Mia's phone, but also a network of club members who could respond. You're not just protecting yourself anymore, Ghost explained. You're part of a system Daniel can't approach without us knowing. 4 months after Daniel's release, the pattern finally changed. Ghost's alert came at 2:17 a.m. on a Saturday. Subject GPS deviation left approved zone heading south. Mia's phone rang immediately. Rattlesnake. Daniel left Worcester 20 minutes ago. He's heading toward Providence on I-95, currently 85 miles away, moving fast. Should I call the police? Already done. His parole officer has been notified. Police are being dispatched. But Mia, he's got at least an hour before they can intercept him. We're mobilizing now. Lock yourself in your safe room. Don't come out until I call you and tell you it's over. Mia ran to her bedroom, locked the reinforced door, grabbed her phone, checked that the pepper spray was where Carlos had left it. Then she waited. Her phone buzzed continuously with updates. From Ghost. Subject 70 miles away, speed 80 miles per hour, Providence exit in 45 minutes. From Carlos. I'm 30 minutes out. Brothers from Providence Charter are heading to your location now. From Rattlesnake. Police have his GPS coordinates they're trying to intercept on the highway. 25 minutes after the first alert, Mia heard motorcycles. Multiple engines, loud in the 2 a.m. silence. They parked in her driveway, her street, positions around her house. Her phone rang. Viper. We're here. 8 brothers surrounding your house. If Daniel shows up, he won't get near your door. Where is he now? Ghost says 35 miles out. But Mia, police just pulled him over. State trooper got him on I-95 near the Massachusetts border. He's in custody. Mia felt her knees give out. She slid down to sit against her. Reinforced door, phone pressed to her ear. He's caught. He's caught. Parole violation, failure to comply with GPS monitoring restrictions, and he had a knife in his car. He's going back to prison. Tonight. The relief was so overwhelming, Mia started crying. Great heaving sobs that she'd been holding back for 4 months of tension. Stay in your room until I come get you, Viper said gently. Let the brothers clear the area. Make sure there are no other surprises. Then we'll talk about what happens next. 30 minutes later, Rattlesnake knocked on Mia's bedroom door. It's me. You can come out. Mia unlocked the door. Rattlesnake stood there looking tired but satisfied. Daniel's in custody at the Massachusetts State Police Barracks. His parole is revoked. He's being transported back to prison in the morning. The knife in his car, plus the GPS violation, plus clearly heading toward you. That's enough to keep him locked up for a long time. How long? His parole officer says minimum 5 more years before he's eligible for another hearing. Possibly longer, depending on what charges they add for tonight. Downstairs, Mia's living room was full of Iron Serpents. 8 large men in leather vests, drinking her coffee, looking like they'd just finished a routine operation, which, she supposed, they had. Thank you, Mia said to all of them. For being here, for watching, for responding. That's what brothers do, Jack said simply. You're a family. We protect family. Carlos arrived 45 minutes later, having broken multiple speed limits getting from Boston to Providence. He pulled Mia into a hug that lifted her off the ground. You're okay, he said, more to himself than to her. You're okay. Because of the club. Because of all of you. Because you prepared. You were ready. You followed the plan. Carlos set her down. But yeah, because of the club, too. They stayed until dawn. 8 Iron Serpents and Carlos drinking coffee in Mia's living room, discussing what had just happened and what it meant. Daniel showed his hand, Rattlesnake said. He couldn't wait. 4 months of perfect behavior and he couldn't control himself. The obsession is too strong. Which means he'll try again, Viper added. When he gets out in 5 years or 10 years or whenever, this isn't over. Then we'll handle it when that time comes, Carlos said. Same way we handled it tonight, with preparation and brothers and making sure Mia's never alone. Ghost looked up from his laptop. I'm keeping the monitoring system active. Wherever Daniel is, prison, parole, wherever, I'll track him. We'll always know where he is. That's illegal, Mia said, but without heat. Yeah, Ghost agreed. But it keeps you alive. I'll take that trade. 5 years after that night, Daniel came up for another parole hearing. Mia submitted a written statement, detailed Daniel's attempt to violate parole and come to your house with a knife. Explained the pattern of obsession spanning 20 years. Rattlesnake testified in person, as did Carlos, as did a psychologist who'd evaluated Daniel and determined he showed no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. The parole board denied Daniel's petition, determined he remained a danger to Mia specifically, set his next possible hearing for another 5 years. "That's 25 years total he'll have served," Mia said to Rattlesnake after the hearing, "for attempting to murder me and violating parole." "Still not enough," Rattlesnake said, "but it's something. He's 50 now. By the time he's eligible again, he'll be 55. Maybe age will slow him down. Or maybe it'll make him more desperate. Men like Daniel don't give up their obsessions. They just get more patient." But Mia had also gotten older, stronger, more prepared. She'd continued the self-defense training, now taught classes herself, helping other women learn to fight back, to refuse to be victims, to understand that they had strength they'd never been forced to use. She'd become an advocate for parole reform, worked with legislators to strengthen victim protections, to give victims more input into release decisions, to require GPS monitoring for all violent offenders. She'd built a life that didn't revolve around fear of Daniel, a life with work she loved, friends she trusted, and a community of iron serpents who'd become family. And when Daniel eventually got out, because someday he would get out, she'd be ready, with cameras and reinforced doors, with self-defense skills and pepper spray, with ghosts monitoring systems and a network of brothers who'd respond within minutes. With everything she'd learned from surviving Daniel twice before, 25 years after Daniel had first tried to murder Mia, she received the call she'd been expecting. "Ms. Torres, this is Officer Janet Mills from DOC Victim Services. I'm calling to inform you that Daniel, Vega, has been granted parole. He'll be released in 60 days. Mia was 56 now. Daniel was 58. A quarter century had passed since he'd stabbed her 6 times in her apartment. But some things hadn't changed. The obsession was still there. Prison counselors reported that Daniel still talked about Mia, still believed they belonged together, still refused to accept responsibility for his violence. "What are his parole conditions?" Mia asked. "GPS monitoring for life, residence restrictions keeping him at least 200 miles from you, mandatory counseling, prohibited contact, and..." Officer Mills paused. "The parole board has also ordered that he wear a continuous alcohol monitoring bracelet. His violence had patterns connected to drinking." 200 miles! That's farther than before. "The board took your testimony seriously about his previous violation. They're being more restrictive this time." After hanging up, Mia called the same people she'd called 5 years ago, and 15 years ago, and 20 years ago. Carlos, now 59 and still road captain of the Iron Serpents Boston charter. "I'll coordinate with the Providence chapter. We'll set up monitoring." Rattlesnake, now 72 and semi-retired, but still deeply involved with the club. "Ghost is already working on the GPS access. We'll know Daniel's location in real time." And Viper, who'd become one of Mia's closest friends over the years. "We're ready. Whatever happens, you're not alone." But there was one new call to make, to the detective who'd contacted Mia 6 months earlier. Detective Sarah Morrison had been investigating a cold case, a woman named Linda Chen who'd been murdered by her ex-boyfriend 28 years ago. The ex-boyfriend had served 20 years and been released on parole. 3 months after release, Linda had been found dead. The ex-boyfriend had an alibi. GPS monitoring had shown him 150 miles away at the time of Linda's death. The case had gone cold until Detective Morrison had started noticing patterns. Other parolees with similar histories, women who'd been threatened by their exes, deaths that happened while the ex had perfect alibis, and GPS monitoring showing them far away. "I think someone's helping these men," Detective Morrison had told Mia during their first conversation. "Someone who knows how to defeat GPS monitoring, who helps obsessed ex-partners get to their victims while maintaining plausible deniability." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Daniel Vega is about to be released, and he fits the profile. Violent obsession, multiple parole violations, pattern of attempting to reach you. If my theory's right, someone might approach him in prison, offer to help him get to you. Who would do that? I don't know yet. But I wanted you to be aware, to be extra careful, to understand that GPS monitoring might not be enough this time. Now, with Daniel's release 60 days away, Mia called Detective Morrison back. "He's getting out." "I know. I've been monitoring his case. And Mia, I need to tell you something I discovered. Daniel's cellmate for the past 3 years was a man named Marcus Webb. Webb was released 6 months ago." So Webb's ex-girlfriend died 4 months ago, murdered in her home. Webb had a perfect alibi. GPS showed him 200 miles away. But I think he was actually there, and I think whoever helped him might help Daniel too. Mia felt cold. "You're saying there's a network helping stalkers defeat their parole monitoring?" "I'm saying I think it's possible. And if Daniel is connected to that network, all your preparations might not be enough." After hanging up, Mia called an emergency meeting. Within 3 hours, her living room was full again. Carlos, Rattlesnake, Viper, Jax, Ghost, and now Detective Morrison, who'd agreed to share what she knew with the club. "I've identified 6 cases in the past 4 years," Detective Morrison explained, spreading files across Mia's coffee table. "Women murdered by exes who had restraining orders and GPS monitoring. In all 6 cases, the GPS showed the ex far away at the time of death. Perfect alibis. Cases went cold." "But you don't think the alibis are real," Ghost said. "I think someone's found a way to spoof GPS signals. Make it look like the parolee is in one location while they're actually somewhere else. It would require technical knowledge and equipment, but it's possible." Ghost leaned forward, studying the files. "Show me the GPS data from these cases." For the next hour, Ghost and Detective Morrison went through technical details. GPS coordinates, timing patterns, signal strengths. Ghost's fingers flew across his laptop. Finally, he sat back. "She's right. The GPS data looks spoofed. See the signal pattern? It's too consistent. Real GPS drifts slightly, especially in buildings. This data shows perfect coordinates, perfect timing. That's artificial. Can you detect if Daniel's GPS is being spoofed?" Mia asked. "I can monitor for anomalies, but if this network is sophisticated, they might be able to fool my monitoring too." Ghost looked troubled. "We might think Daniel is 200 miles away when he's actually right outside your door." The room went silent. "Then we change our approach," Viper said finally. "We don't rely on GPS monitoring. We assume Daniel might be anywhere, anytime. We increase physical protection." "For how long?" Mia asked. "Forever. I can't live the rest of my life with constant guards." "No," Rattlesnake said. "But we can make Daniel understand, before he's released, that coming after you carries consequences he can't avoid. Even with GPS spoofing. Even with help from this network." "How?" "We send a message, inside the prison. Make it clear that you're under permanent Iron Serpents protection. That any network helping him will have to go through us. That the cost of coming after you is too high." Detective Morrison shook her head. "That sounds like threatening a prisoner. I can't be part of that." "You're not part of it," Rattlesnake said. "You investigated, found patterns, warned Mia. That's your job. What the club does with that information is our business. If violence happens—" "No violence," Viper interrupted. "Just information. Daniel needs to understand reality. That's not violence. That's education." Mia never learned exactly what message the Iron Serpent sent to Daniel in prison. What she did learn was that 2 weeks before Daniel's scheduled release, he withdrew his parole application, told the parole board he wasn't ready, needed more counseling, wanted to serve additional time to ensure he was fully rehabilitated. Officer Mills called Mia with the news. "This is highly unusual. Inmates don't typically request to stay in prison longer, but Mr. Vega's attorney submitted paperwork this morning withdrawing his parole application. He won't be released." "Did he say why?" "The official reason is personal recognition that he needs more treatment. But between you and me, Ms. Torres, prisoners who voluntarily withdraw parole applications have usually received information that makes freedom less appealing than staying inside." After hanging up, Mia called Rattlesnake. "What did you do?" "We had a conversation with some people who know some people who talked to Daniel, explained that you have permanent protection, that any attempt to reach you would be responded to immediately and permanently, that the network helping parolees defeat GPS monitoring was being investigated by law enforcement and was about to be shut down. and that staying in prison was significantly safer than being released and facing the Iron Serpents. You threatened him. We educated him about consequences. There's a difference. He's staying in prison because he's more afraid of the club than he is of staying locked up. Yeah, that's about right. Mia sat with that for a long time. Part of her felt relief. Daniel wasn't getting out, wasn't coming after her. Part of her felt unsettled about the methods used to achieve that result. How long will this last, she asked. He can apply for parole again. Eventually he'll take the chance. Maybe. Or maybe he'll realize that the obsession that's controlled him for 25 years isn't worth dying over. People do change. Sometimes fear is what changes them. 30 years after Daniel had first tried to murder Mia, she stood in an auditorium giving a keynote speech about survivor advocacy and systematic reform. Daniel had never been released. He'd withdrawn 3 more parole applications over the years. Now 63 years old, he'd served 3 decades for an attempted murder that had shaped both his life and Mia's. Mia was 61. She'd built a life beyond being Daniel's victim. She'd become a nationally recognized advocate for victim rights. She'd helped pass legislation in 12 states, strengthening parole oversight and victim protections. She'd also become an honorary member of the Iron Serpents, the first woman given that status. Not a patched member, but family. Someone who'd earned respect through survival and advocacy. Her speech that day was about the gaps in the justice system, about how restraining orders often failed, about how parole systems prioritized rehabilitation over victim safety, about how women survived through means the system didn't approve of because the approved means didn't work. She didn't mention the Iron Serpents by name, didn't explain exactly how she'd survived 3 decades of Daniel's obsession, but she ended with this. The system should protect victims. But until it does, and it often doesn't, victims will find protection wherever they can. Through friends, through family, through communities that step up when official channels fail. We shouldn't have to seek alternative protection, but we do, and we survive however we can. After the speech, a young woman approached her nervously. Ms. Torres, my name is Rachel. I have an ex who's being released from prison next month. He tried to kill me 3 years ago. I'm terrified the parole system will fail me the way it failed you. I was wondering, is there any way to get the kind of protection you had? Mia looked at this young woman who reminded her so much of herself 30 years ago, terrified, desperate, knowing the system would fail her. Tell me your story, Mia said. Everything, and then I'll make some calls. Because some things hadn't changed in 30 years. The system still failed women regularly. Parole monitoring still had holes. GPS could still be spoofed. Restraining orders were still often just paper. But the Iron Serpents were still there too, still protecting people the system abandoned, still operating in gaps the law didn't fill, still making sure that women who'd survived violence once didn't have to survive it again. Mia pulled out her phone and called a familiar number. Viper, I have someone who needs help. Can you meet us? And the cycle continued, protection passing from one survivor to the next, communities stepping up when systems failed, justice taking forms the law didn't recognize, but that kept people alive. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't how things were supposed to work, but it was how things actually worked for people who had learned that survival required more than faith in broken systems. It was reality. And in reality, the Iron Serpents kept riding. Looking back after 30 years, what would you have done? Would you have trusted a motorcycle club to keep you safe when the parole system failed repeatedly? Would you have accepted protection that operated outside the law because the law couldn't protect you? Where do you draw the line between legal justice and staying alive? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.